Alrighty, so we're now going to go through the 4 key trends from the findings. So let's go through. Let's give you a bit of context to start with. So we're going to reveal the 4 key trends from some reviews over the past 12 months. Now, as a bit of context, in 2019, we took all the feedback from apprentice reviews that year and launched the 7 building blocks to quality apprenticeships. Now, these 7 are on screen now. We still have this white paper, if you'd like it, but it's 3 years old. The growth of apprenticeships, as Tim was just talking about, has been phenomenal. And combine that with the influence of the pandemic on the apprentice experience, we felt it was important to understand the impact this has had to programs and thought it was important to conduct the research again. So June 2021 through May 2022, we received a record number of reviews. Thank you to all those apprentices who reviewed and all those line managers, early careers teams and training providers who encouraged your intakes to leave their feedback. We sneaked a second record year of reviews, the 6,243 being 40 more than last year. So to me, that's a record. That works. And we also had over 40,000 data points to interrogate from all the ratings. And with an average of 500 words per review, we estimate we sent over 3.1 million words written by apprentices, leaving their feedback over to our qualitative analysts at a company called Tribe, who helped turn the feedback into these 4 very handy trends you will see shortly. Now, we're 15 minutes for these, and there'll be 5 minutes for questions at the end. So again, do pop any questions in the chat. We'll try and come to as many as we can. Okay, first trend is the feedback is incredibly positive. A quote from our analysts was, "All the evidence shows that employers are now managing apprenticeships extremely effectively," which I want to just start with because it was an amazing place to start when they fed it back to us. 3 mini sections demonstrating this positivity. The first being ratings. We've got an average review rating across all 6,000 reviews, and also asked apprentices, would you recommend your program to a friend? Firstly, the average review rating was an astonishing 8.4 out of 10, and a whopping 97% of apprentices recommend their scheme to a friend. Now, in a difficult year for onboarding, employee experience, engagement, what outrageously positive feedback from apprentices. The high review rating is the purest metric for success. So let's start with a huge thank you and well done to all employers and training providers for together across the industry having achieved such amazing feedback. Now, when delving into these a little deeper, females rate their experiences slightly higher at 8.44, and 98% recommend their schemes to a friend. Compare that to the harder to please males, who rate their experiences 8.3 out of 10, and just the 96% recommend their scheme to a friend. What do you think about those, Tim?
It just shows how ungrateful us boys are sometimes, right? But no, I think in all seriousness, it's a great way to start off the conversation, because I think in the difficult times of hybrid working, making sure that we can keep culture up, onboarding, keeping warm from a virtual distance with people who may never have actually met outside of a square box on a screen, right? It's great to see that high level of quality being acknowledged and fed back by the apprentices themselves. So it's a massive thank you and round of applause required for every single person. So hopefully, if you have a bottle of bubbly, that's sparkling water, by the way, I said sparkling water, you could take a selfie of yourself and send that in to us, because you should be really, really proud and happy of that. It's a great feedback, isn't it, Ollie?
Yeah, genuinely, really, really amazing. After the ratings, the second mini section within this first trend is around structure. So 97% of apprentices said their program was well structured and well organized. We believe this is because apprenticeships are so much more embedded within businesses. The 2019 report I mentioned earlier actually involved some feedback around disorganization, a lack of collaboration between line managers and HR, both of which are quite indicative of programs starting and growing. Such positive feedback around structure and organization, it very much demonstrates how well established programs have become. The third mini section demonstrates the support. So Tim, you guessed support earlier, support is incoming. This is from both training providers and employers. When looking at training providers specifically, one question asked is how much support do you receive from your training provider? 76% of apprentices said a lot, 21% a fair amount, and only 3% across all types of programs fed back they received not much support from their training provider. Again, another amazingly positive outcome. 3/4 of learners stating a lot of support is great feedback. And that 76% average rises to 84%, specifically for those on intermediate apprenticeships, who will be spending more time learning. And it drops to 69% for degree apprentices, where they'll need less support. We speak about training providers as a whole. However, mentions for each type of training provider show universities referenced in 36% of reviews, colleges in second at 28%, and independent training providers referenced 20% of the time. Now, a third of mentions for universities, it really highlights the prevalence and growth of degree apprenticeships. Is this something you're seeing as well?
A huge growth in this particular area, which I think does great for giving credence to the power of apprenticeships in terms of the structuring, and to be able to, in a not aggressive way, compete with the long established drive for people to go down one particular pathway around universities. So I think now what we see with universities and collaborations with education training providers all coming together, actually what we're seeing is that we're making programs fit for the individual as well as fit for the organization. So it's great to see this growth. What I just want to make sure that we're getting is that we're incorporating or accessing as much talent being told about the degree level apprenticeships, because we've always had a conversation, haven't we, Ollie, about the power of parents in this conversation and educating parents about this different pathway as well as the pupils.
Yeah, really good shout. I think I was quite blown away by just how prevalent that was. A similar question asked about training providers was also asked to employers. So how much support do you receive from your employer? At 76% from the previous slide relating to support from training providers, this rises even higher when asked about their employer, with 85% of apprentices saying they received a lot of support, 13% a fair amount, and again, only 2% saying they received not much support from their employer, which is again, incredibly positive. And upon further inspection as to where this feedback comes from, we were pleasantly surprised. Almost 1 in 2 students referenced their line manager. Now, one early barrier to successful apprenticeship programs was buy-in from line managers. So this, for me, was superb to hear. And HR is barely mentioned at 5%, which I view as an extremely positive thing, as it shows line managers are clearly there for apprentices. The wider team is referenced 22% at the time, then mentors and buddies, as you called out earlier, combined at 17%. Now, mentors and buddies were a huge trend from the previous research, that friendly peer-to-peer assigned support. And it's just as prevalent again, being mentioned in 1 in every 5 reviews. When you compare this per program, mentors and buddies peaks at 22% for degree apprentices, who will naturally be more experienced and able to provide more competent peer-to-peer support, and it reduces in prevalence through lower level apprenticeships. Conversely, line management references rose to 54% for both intermediate and advanced level apprentices, naturally requiring and receiving more top-down direction, and this then reduced prevalence for higher level apprenticeships. So interesting trends there. Trend 1 has been very comprehensive with many positive news stories. So we were very keen to kick things off with just what incredible feedback there's been. Trend 2 is teamwork makes the dream work. The first review question requests apprentices give an overview of their role and what this involves on a day-to-day basis. The feedback highlights that working with a team is the main attribute to their day-to-day experience, with 29% referencing this and 17% working with customers day-to-day. For some, there is a higher degree of administrative work, including checking items and tasks. The average is 9% across all levels, and that number doubles for intermediate level apprentices. Learning appears high on the agenda, with presenting and solving problems actually at the bottom of the table, perhaps somewhat surprisingly, as we often hear young people are keen to improve their presenting skills. Delving into the per program analysis, working with a team is referenced most amongst the higher and degree levels, with with over a third of apprentices across both levels referencing their involvement working in a team. Whilst if we look at working with customers section and break that down per program, working with customers is referenced most amongst levels 2 and 3 on an opposing sliding scale to the working with a team slide previously. And this makes sense with more roles for level 2 and 3 apprentices being more customer facing, especially in retail or hospitality industries. Tim, any thoughts or reflections on this bit?
Yeah, I think this is incredibly important about that power of organizations, and particularly those in charge of apprenticeship programs, focusing on that culture that we're trying to build at the organization, because that piece around team working, obviously coming off the back of COVID and then working around now the hybrid working environments that we have, that ability to construct a positive, psychologically safe team environment, there's more work and energy having to go in there. So it's great that we've highlighted this trend, because there'll be lots of people, I think, who've got great examples of how they're doing it that we can all learn from as a community.
Yeah, nice one. Thank you. Right, we are halfway there. We've got about 5 minutes before we come to you for some questions. Trend 3 is post-pandemic growth. Now, like trend 1, trend 3 is also threefold, with a focus on enjoyment, extracurricular, and salaries. Now, enjoyment, the question apprentices respond to does have enjoy within it. So there's the only caveat that it gets mentioned a lot. However, enjoyment is far out in front, being mentioned by 1 in every 3 apprentices. As you can see, when we delve into the long tail of words most mentioned, you can start to see why apprentices are enjoying themselves. Learning is referenced by 19% of apprentices here, and also features highly across other questions around recommending companies to a friend. 12% stated new skills, 11% stating the team, and then you've developing, interesting, loved it, which you could argue is quite similar to enjoyment, and then training. Overall, the message is, if you're aiming to engage apprentices, everything they're enjoying revolves around learning and development. The second post-pandemic growth trend is that social is back. When asked, are there extracurricular activities to get involved in at your work, you can see here that apprentices are involved in a real range of extracurricular activities. Social, sports, networking, then charity, volunteering, and community work. Some of this could be done online, but it's unlikely. Socializing with colleagues is most frequently mentioned, which demonstrates apprentices are really valuing those out-of-work opportunities. Charity was mentioned twice as frequently by intermediate and advanced level apprentices than it was for higher and degree levels, highlighting both the success for those running levels 2 and 3 programs, but it also demonstrates to me a bit of a gap and definitely an opportunity for those running programs for higher levels to get charity more involved. The third element demonstrating post-pandemic growth is salaries. Now, you'll see a table here with the average salaries apprentices are reporting across the 4 programs, with an actual and percentage variance compared to last year. Salaries are mostly increasing. However, unfortunately for intermediate apprentices, salaries reported have actually reduced, whilst advanced have risen 4%, higher up a whopping 23%, and degree up 12% year on year. The higher and degree increases are very, very encouraging. However, levels 2 and 3 really aren't, especially when you've got the macroeconomic consideration of the rising cost of living, with consumer goods increasing from the impact of the war in Ukraine, the current government in a bit of a state of turmoil. It's all over the media, and it's very much a significant concern for apprentices starting their careers. Now, as you can see here, in May 22, the annual rate of inflation was 9.1%, which is the highest it's been since 1982. The Office for National Statistics are projecting a cost of living increase to peak at 11% in October. So it does put that salary increase into perspective slightly. That said, having a strategy for salaries is going to be important to attract future apprentices. Tim, going through a period of the biggest inflation for 30 years is going to be tough. Have you spoken with many employers, and especially those recruiting young people into level 2 and 3 roles, about how they can support apprentices going through this?
Yeah, this is weighing heavily on lots of talent managers now and apprentice leads in organizations, particularly with a sometimes seemingly conflicting agenda of more inclusive workforces, particularly around social mobility. So with some of the things that you're talking about, they are now having to think about many more aspects of making sure the workforce is inclusive when we're facing more difficult environments of people coming into work or traveling out to see customers, etc. But the good thing, what I'm seeing, is that they're so optimistic about this being a talent management strategy. They are now seeing it more so as a risk mitigation conversation, where if we don't do more of this, we won't get that diversity of thought in our business, which is offsetting some of the pressures that are coming more obviously through the economic and macroeconomic stuff that you were talking about in the presentation, Ollie.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, your final trend is communication is booming. James Humes, an author and speechwriter to the US President Eisenhower in the 1950s. Anyone heard of him? But I found this quote, and I think it really reigns true today. The art of communication is the language of leadership. Now, why do we pick on this? Well, we ask apprentices, have you learned any new skills or developed existing skills? As you can see here, the soft skill of communicating is way out in front, with the two technical skills of software and programming second, just ahead of Excel, and we're back to a soft skill in confidence building in fourth. Presenting is at the bottom. This, to me, is a surprise. Feedback from virtual events that we've run and are running again in autumn and spring is that young people love to hear from other apprentices. I do feel this presents an opportunity, given how much young people looking for apprenticeships trust hearing from their peers. Now, when we overlay the results from 2019, the general picture remains actually quite similar, with last year's far right and this year's on the left. Now, I won't go into them all because there's quite a lot here, but you can see the handy icons. So those in green are similar, those in purple are lower, and those in orange are higher. The biggest change has seen communication increase by 4% and stretch even further out in front. We believe this is due to the increased importance and need for communication within businesses over such a period of uncertainty and remote working. This dual impact has been a real success for communication, and almost a third of apprentices are now stating this is a core skill they've learned or developed. Tim, agree?
Yeah, 100%. When you think about the conversations that are now having, I'm sure many of the people watching and viewing online would have heard the recent conversations about meta skills. And one of the big elements around meta skills is around storytelling. And whether that's an organization brand, an organization leader, or the next generation of talent that we're recruiting via apprenticeships channels, that power of storytelling using clear and concise and effective communication is right up there with one of the most important things as we try to augment those meta skills with some of the more technical skills that are driving lots of the efficiency and effectiveness in our business practices today. So it's great to see so many people online. I saw the team from Fortnum and Mason, Balfour Beatty and South Bank University online. I'm sure all of them are very good at using the communication skills and would really align with what you've just said there, Ollie.
Love it. Meta skills. I haven't got that in my vocabulary yet. So
it's coming. Listen, me and you have got it because we've got it together.
Love it. A final note on communication is that the growth and respect of how visible HR has been. Now, it's actually more anecdotal in its analysis, but there were many complementary references to commitment to pronouns and awareness of well-being. The same with diversity and inclusion too, demonstrating some very positive changes fed back by apprentices around inclusivity. So well done, everyone. I think that's really, really important. In summary, here are your 4 trends from the 6,000 reviews, 3 million words fed back by your apprentices in the last year. The feedback is overwhelmingly positive. Well done. 97% of apprentices would recommend their experience to a friend. Just awesome. Teamwork makes the dream work across all levels, but even more so for higher and degree apprentices. Post-pandemic growth and enjoyment with social being back and salaries mostly increasing for all but levels 2, which we flagged. And finally, communication is booming. apprentices are valuing both the increased communication as well as the more inclusive approach. I hope you found all those results and trends useful. We've been personally blown away by the results. We will be compiling this into a report for you in the coming weeks to share internally with line managers, apprentices, or anyone putting together a business case to grow their apprenticeship program. So do get in touch with me or your account manager at Rate My Apprenticeship to receive this.